The last thing I want to speak about in Chapter 8 is the groupthink and team meetings. So we talked briefly about groupthink during that norming stage of team development. And so some issues we have with groupthink is that we don't consider as many alternatives to the situation or ways to address a problem. Because again, groupthink is the group's thinking one way and an individual doesn't want to um, rock the boat by offering an alternative to that situation. They just want to kind of go with the flow. Okay. And so by doing that, then we're not critical of each other's ideas. It kind of leads to a time where we are kind of stagnant, right? We're just kind of going through the motions and we're not kind of thinking of different ways of approaching the situation. Um, we also may not be as selective when we gather our information because we already have our thoughts in mind. And so we're only going to gather information based on the group, the way the group is thinking. And so if something else comes up, then we're kind of limited ourselves on the type of information that we're going to gather. Then lastly, we're not going to have a contingency plan. So that just basically means a backup plan. And so if we have all of, as you might say, we have all our eggs in one basket. There's no backup plan. So if that doesn't work, or if we find that the results are not what we were looking for, then we have to go back to square one. And so during that norming phase, as we move past that norming to performing, now that we're in that performing stage, we're realizing that, this ideas are not just something that's questionable, or just something that's there just to question how we're doing it, but really it does lead to potentially an improvement in the process. So symptoms of groupthink is that, the group might think, oh man, we've got this. We are all set. We're all working on the same page. We're all thinking the same way. Nobody can destroy this group because we got such this great power going on. But then ultimately, if the direction you're going doesn't pan out and it fails, then the whole group is going to fail. You don't have that backup plan. Okay. You might also rationalize poor decisions because, well, if everybody's thinking this way, then this must be a good decision for us to go with. And then ultimately, people within the team are not expressing their true feelings, and so we want to make sure that everybody feels like that they are part of the team and that they are able to express their feelings. About what the direction the team is going, the things that the team is focusing on. Ultimately, as the team leader, it's your responsibility to take those concerns and incorporate them into the group. And how do we move from that norming phase to avoid groupthink back into that performing stage where we're doing that high level of productivity? So let's talk about group meetings at the point, okay? So starting within the blue section, we have to plan the meeting first. So as the group leader, it's important that you plan the meeting by setting the agenda. You can't just go into a meeting and just, okay, we're going to talk about whatever we feel like talking about today. No, there needs to be an agenda. And there needs to be special attention paid to the sequence of things. So if there is new business that needs, invigorating ideas, people need to have a lot of input, you might put that towards the beginning of the meeting. Or if we have old business that needs to be addressed and needs to be discussed, we might put that towards the beginning of the meeting because people are the freshest during the beginning of the meeting. Towards the end of the meeting, people are starting to zone out. They're on their cell phones. They're checking their email. They're doing everything they can just to be present, but they may not be as involved. And so that sequence of that agenda is very important. The other thing we want to do is we want to distribute that agenda beforehand. That way people have an idea of what is going to be discussed during that meeting. They can plan for that particular meeting. They know when the date is going to be. They know what time it's going to be. They know where it's going to be. All that information is on the agenda for that specific meeting. Now, once we're at the meeting, The team leader doesn't necessarily take minutes. Minutes basically just is not a word for word dictation about what was said. It's more of just like a summary about what was being discussed and what actions were taken. So there might be somebody, for example, when I was on the board of AHA, the Alamo Area Hospitality Association, we had a secretary position that their responsibility was to take minutes during the meeting. Now, the minutes include the attendance, who was in attendance, what time the meeting started, what time it ended, and everything that was discussed during that time. It's always a good idea when you're taking minutes to use the agenda as the outline. And so you can just take notes about what was discussed under each agenda item. And then we type all that up. And as we evaluate the meeting, then we distribute those minutes out. The other part is part of conducting the meeting is as the group leader, it's important to keep the team on track. Okay, side conversations are going to happen, tangents, we're going to go off in different directions. And so as a team leader, it's your responsibility, if the meeting is an hour long, that you want to be respectful of everybody's time, and you want to start on time and you want to finish on time. And so part of that means you have to keep the conversation and the discussion focused on the topics that are on the agenda. If other things come up, we can include that in the minutes, which will then help us shape our agenda for the next time. Lastly, as we evaluate the meeting, we want to distribute those minutes to everybody to make sure that everybody agrees that that is exactly what the conversation was. Once those minutes are done, then we can either provide the minutes to our leadership of the organization, or we can have a conversation with the leadership of the organization as the group leader to say, this is the things that were discussed, these are the actions that were completed, this is the direction that we're going. And so we want to evaluate that meeting, and then you're going to ultimately then plan for the next meeting. You're going to plan that agenda. Now, again, some meetings can be regularly scheduled. They can be once a month. They can be every other month. They can be once a quarter, okay, once every 3 months. They can be as needed basis. And so if it's a regular meeting, it's easy to set that agenda, especially if you also have a very regular meeting place. If your meetings are as needed, well, then those people need much more notice to plan to attend those meetings. So for example, the Alamo Area Hospitality Association always had their board meeting on the Monday before the luncheon on that third Thursday. So essentially the third Monday of the month was the board meeting, the third Thursday of the month was the association luncheon. And so we knew going into the process in January, the calendar was laid out, we knew exactly when our meetings were going to be. We were also very fortunate that we had a very regular meeting place in order to hold our meetings. The San Antonio Hotel Lodging Association, SALA, and the San Antonio Area Tourism Council are two organizations that I sit on the board for as well as an ex officio member. So I'm just there really just to kind of represent the college, let those organizations know what our college is doing, but it also kind of keeps me involved what's happening in the industry. But those meetings happen on a regular basis, but they happen in different locations. And so it's really crucial for those agendas to be put out in well enough notice so that I know exactly where those meetings are, so that I can plan accordingly for my travel to get from point A to point B. So meetings, it's actually really fun. I was the president of the Alamo Area Hospitality Association in 2014. I had the opportunity to put the agendas together. Something else that I have on a regular basis, every semester, one time, I meet with an advisory committee that's comprised of industry professionals from different hotels, different positions within the hotels, from GM to HR managers to sales managers. And so they come to St. Philip's, and I, as the director of hotel management program, have to create an agenda. Then I have to conduct the meeting as well. And so anytime you have an opportunity to serve on a board of directors, anytime you have an opportunity just to participate or sit in or listen on a board of directors meeting, I encourage you to take that, because I think that was one of the biggest hurdles that I overcame when somebody asked me to be on the board of directors of AHA in 2012. And as a recent college graduate, I thought, why would I be on a board of directors? I mean, I don't understand why anybody would want me to be there. And so being on that board of directors as the community outreach co-chair really opened my eyes to being involved. And then once I did that, my second year I was the vice president, and then I was asked to be. Then I naturally became the president, and then moved on to immediate past president. And so I encourage you to get involved with different organizations. Most often, depending on the situation and depending on the organization, if you're a member of that organization, they will allow you to sit in on board of directors meetings. It varies by the different organizations. But if you are a member of something and you want to go and sit in and observe the board of directors meetings, most of them are open. So I encourage you to look into that and be active and get involved in these organizations, because that's ultimately how your career is going to progress.